Brothers and sisters, beloved elders, the time has come to listen with hearts open, minds awake, and spirits ready. Hear the call. Africa is rising, not as bystanders, but as architects of her own future. In a world where data flows like water, where algorithms shape reality, where power no longer sits solely at the summit of mountains, but in the circuits of our machines. Now, our continent steps into the light of that power. Today we bring you a story of bold ambition, of one man, one people, one continent saying, "We will control our destiny via digital tools." We will no longer wait for others to write our code, to frame our future, to build our tomorrow. We will build it ourselves. If you believe in the power of our people and the promise of our generations, hit subscribe and join the journey right now. In the heart of West Africa, in the nation of Burkina Faso, a new chapter is being opened. 5,000 young students are beginning training in AI, cloud technology, 5G. They are being handed the keys to what some call digital sovereignty. And this is not just their fight. It is our fight. As African Americans on the other side of the Atlantic, our roots stretch deep into this soil, our futures entwined with its rise. So stay with me as we explore what this moment means, what it demands from us, and what hope it holds for our children and grandchildren. Beloved family, let us journey now across oceans and time to the heart of the Sahel, Burkina Faso, a land whose name itself means the land of upright men, a place that has known drought and hardship, coups and struggle, but has never bowed its head in defeat. And standing at the helm of this chapter is a man the world watches closely, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, barely 40 years old, military uniform on his shoulders, but the fire of a visionary in his eyes. For some, he is a soldier. For others, a symbol. A man who dares to speak the language of self-determination in a century that too often silences such voices. In early 2024, the nation of Burkina Faso announced a bold step: the launch of Africa's first large-scale artificial intelligence training program. 5,000 young Burkinabe, hand-picked from universities, technical schools, and communities across the nation, have begun their journey into the digital age, not to consume, but to create, not to follow, but to lead. The training spans the disciplines of AI, cloud computing, data management, and fifth-generation communications, the invisible threads that now bind the modern world. The initiative is built not merely on technology, but on philosophy, a declaration that Africa will no longer be the subject of algorithms designed elsewhere, that her sons and daughters will write their own code, craft their own systems, and govern their own data. Some call this digital sovereignty. But to understand it, we must feel it. Digital sovereignty means being the author of your own digital destiny, owning your information, your innovation, your infrastructure. For generations, Africa's resources have been extracted: gold, oil, cobalt, cocoa. Now, in this age, there is a new resource: data. And the extraction continues unless there is ownership. So Traoré's announcement was more than a policy. It was a proclamation. A cry of emancipation echoing through fiber optic veins. He stood before his people and said, "Our youth will no longer wait for the world to employ them. They will build their own digital nation." Now imagine that moment, my brothers and sisters, to restore. The sun heavy over Ouagadougou, the capital. Rows of young faces, eyes bright, screens flickering in the light, 5,000 pairs of hands poised on keyboards, trembling not from fear but from purpose. Can you picture it? The hum of machines mixing with the murmur of hope. The elders looking on, whispering prayers their ancestors never dreamed they'd see answered. This, dear family, is not a small story. This is not a single event tucked in a newspaper column. This is a spiritual declaration. Africa saying to the world, we will not be coded into the margins any longer. And yet, there is another layer to this. Behind the training stands a partnership with international tech firms, including Huawei, commitments to train 5,000 Burkina Faso by 2028. To some, this represents opportunity, a bridge between local ambition and global expertise. But to others, it raises a question. Can digital sovereignty truly be achieved if the teachers come from outside? That, my friends, is the delicate tension of this story. Hope braided with caution, pride woven with pragmatism. Still, for a continent too often told to wait its turn, this initiative sends a thunderous message. Our turn has begun. Let me tell you something, my elders, you who marched for civil rights, who built communities from ashes, who saw computers rise from rooms to pockets, you understand what this means. You know what it is to be told you can't, and to answer, watch me. And that same spirit, that very heartbeat, now pulses through the young veins of West Africa. One student, barely 20, told reporters, I want to build systems that protect our farmers from drought using AI. Another said, I want to create apps that help our mothers access healthcare faster. They speak with the same conviction our grandparents had when they dreamed of freedom songs. Now, picture the symbolism of this. 5,000 students, each representing a seed. In 5 years, 10 years, what will grow from those seeds? If nurtured, perhaps an ecosystem of African engineers, innovators, leaders. If neglected, perhaps just a field of lost potential. That, my friends, is the choice before us. Because launching a program is one thing, making it work is another. And as with every great journey, the first step may be taken in joy. But the road ahead is steep, uncertain, and full of storms. The question, then, is not, can Africa start? The question is, can Africa sustain? Because hope alone does not build networks, nor train engineers, nor guard dreams. What happens when inspiration meets the hard reality of infrastructure, funding, and the world's expectations? Stay with me, because the fire that began in Burkina Faso is about to be tested in the winds of doubt. Family. Hope is a fragile thing. It burns bright at the beginning, and it lights up rooms, fills hearts, draws applause. But what happens when the music fades, when the cameras turn away, and the work truly begins? Because soon after the announcement of Traoré's grand vision, reality came knocking. And reality, as it often does, came heavy. Burkina Faso, that proud nation, sits in the heart of the Sahel, a region burdened with hardship. There are villages where electricity hums only a few hours a day, where young minds hungry for learning must walk miles to find connection, where schools share one working laptop among dozens of students. So when Traoré said, we will train 5,000 young people in AI, the world raised an eyebrow. 5,000? In AI? In the Sahel? Some called it impossible, others called it propaganda. And yet, among the people, among the mothers, the elders, the teachers, there was a different sound. It wasn't cynicism. It was faith. One teacher in Ouagadougou said, we have been told we cannot for too long. Let them try. Even if they fail, we will have begun. And that, beloved, is the essence of progress. It doesn't begin with certainty. It begins with courage. But courage does not pay for fiber optic cables. It does not build data centers. It does not buy servers or power grids. So the government turned to partners, some local, some international. Among them, Huawei, a global tech giant, pledged to help train Burkina Faso youth in digital skills by 2028. To some, this was cause for celebration. At last, they said, Africa is being taken seriously. But to others, this partnership raised deeper questions. Can a continent truly achieve digital sovereignty, control over its data and digital destiny, when its infrastructure is shaped by outside hands? Is the dream of independence still independence if the tools come with invisible strings attached? Ah, beloved, do you feel that tension? It is the same one our ancestors felt in every age, the desire to rise, but the fear of dependence. The yearning to learn, but the caution not to be taught into servitude. International observers called the initiative ambitious but risky. Western media debated whether a military-led government could manage an AI revolution. Some praised Traoré's courage, others whispered of political theater. But while analysts argued, the youth kept typing, line after line, code after code, turning their hope into syntax, their hunger into software. And across the ocean, in America, in the homes of the African diaspora, news of the initiative began to ripple. Some elders smiled softly and said, "It's about time." Others sighed, "We've heard promises before." But deep down, something stirred, pride mixed with pain. Because every African-American elder knows this truth. When your people begin to stand, you stand a little taller, too. And that's the thing about this moment. It isn't just about Burkina Faso. It's about the story of us all. For centuries, the world told Africa what it could or could not become. Now, Africa is speaking back, not in protest, but in code. Still, even as the seeds of progress take root, the winds of challenge blow fierce. The Sahel faces insecurity, displacement, and poverty. There are threats from extremist groups, pressure from sanctions, the unpredictable dance of global politics. Some critics say, how can a nation under such strain focus on AI? But perhaps that's exactly the point. Maybe hope must be forged in the fire, not after it. And my brothers and sisters, if there is one thing we know, it is how to build under pressure. Our grandmothers cooked feasts with nothing but scraps. Our grandfathers raised churches from dirt floors. Our parents built communities in the shadow of systems meant to break them. So when I see 5,000 young Africans learning to build algorithms amidst struggle, I do not see futility. I see familiarity. Because greatness has always begun this way. Still, we must not romanticize the struggle. There are risks. There are forces that would rather Africa stay a consumer, not a creator. That would rather the diaspora stay silent, not supportive. That would rather this story fade into the dust of 1,000 good intentions. And that, family, is where we come in. Because if we, the global African family, in America, in the Caribbean, in Europe, do not lift this story, who will? If we do not support these young dreamers, who will remind them that their ancestors' blood still runs strong? There's a proverb that says, when you want to go fast, go alone. When you want to go far, go together. And maybe, just maybe, this is the moment for all of us to go together. Because, beloved, this isn't just about coding. It's about reclaiming the narrative. It's about telling the world Africa's not just catching up, she's creating her own future. But every movement that dares to rise will face the weight of resistance. The real test is not in the classroom, but in what comes after. So stay with me, because next, we'll look at the consequences. What happens when a nation decides to take its destiny into its own digital hands? Family. Every seed carries within it both promise and peril. And when those 5,000 young Africans pressed their fingertips to those glowing keyboards, the world did not yet know. What harvest would grow from their labor? Let us imagine for a moment the best of what could be. 5 years from now, those students could become the architects of a new digital Africa. They could build hospitals that predict disease before it strikes, farms that sense drought before it starves the soil, governments that protect citizens' data rather than sell it. If even half of them succeed, 5,000 could become 50,000. 50,000 could become millions. Imagine a generation where African engineers no longer wait for tools from Silicon Valley. They create their own. Imagine African-designed algorithms reflecting African languages, African faces, African dreams. That is not science fiction. That is sovereignty. That is digital sovereignty. And yet, as with every dream, there is a shadow. Because in this modern age, talent is both a blessing and a target. If the program thrives, there will be those who seek to buy it out, to redirect it, to absorb it into their global machinery. We have seen this before, haven't we? Our history is filled with moments when brilliance was born on African soil and then taken away. Resources mined, ideas stolen, futures sold. That's why this moment must be guarded not just with policy, but with principle. Because make no mistake, this is not just about jobs or technology, it's about ownership of tomorrow. And that, beloved, is where we, the diaspora, must rise. For too long, we have watched Africa's stories told by foreign tongues, Africa's innovations judged by foreign eyes. But today, the page is open, and our names can be written in it again. Do you feel it? That stirring? That possibility? Because if this succeeds, it doesn't only change Burkina Faso, it changes the story of blackness itself. It says to the world, we are not just survivors of history, we are authors of the future. But if it fails, if these young dreamers are left without tools, without power, without investment, it will be more than a setback. It will be heartbreak, because hope, once broken, is hard to rebuild, and Africa has had too many broken promises. Too many headlines that began with first and ended with forgotten. Too many youth who believed and then were left behind. I remember an old preacher once said, "It is better to die in pursuit of your dream than to live in the comfort of someone else's." And that, my family, is what this generation is doing, risking comfort for creation, risking failure for freedom. But here's the truth. They cannot do it alone. Because hope without hands is helpless. And that's where you come in. Yes, you watching this right now. You who remember dial-up modems, who witnessed the rise of the internet, who saw how technology reshaped the world. You who know what it means to be underestimated and still rise. What would it mean if you mentored one of those students, if you shared this message with your church, your community, your network? If you invested, not in charity, but in destiny? Because when you lift one, you lift all. When you teach one, you teach a nation. When you believe in one, you awaken a generation. That is how movements grow, not through miracles, but through moments of shared faith. So let the world watch. Let them measure and doubt. We will measure in souls awakened, in futures reclaimed, in minds unchained. For every young Burkinabe coder typing their first, "Hello World," there is an ancestor whispering, "We waited for this day." But here's the question, my beloved community. What will you do to make sure this day does not fade? Will you just watch the headlines? Or will you help write the next chapter? Because, yes, 5,000 students is a beginning. But if we come together, educators, elders, dreamers, and believers, that number can multiply beyond any government's expectation. 5,000 can become a movement, and a movement can become a revolution, not of blood, but of brilliance, not of war, but of wisdom. So, my brothers and sisters, as these young minds rise in Africa, eyes turn from across the ocean, watching, wondering, what will the world say? What will America say? And more importantly, what will we do? Stay with me, for next we'll see how this story echoes beyond borders, into the hearts of a global community. Brothers and sisters, let us now lift our eyes beyond Burkina Faso's borders, across the Atlantic, across time, across bloodlines that history tried to cut but never could. Because this story, beloved, is not confined to Africa. It is flowing through our veins here in America, in the Caribbean, in London, in every city where a descendant of Africa still breathes and dreams. When news of Traoré's program reached the diaspora, it came like a quiet drumbeat at first. A headline shared on Facebook, a link whispered in a family chat. Look at this. Africa's doing AI now. And for a moment, hearts paused. Because for many of us, Africa has too long been shown through the lens of suffering, not strength. But here was something different. Here was a story of invention, not intervention. A story not of aid, but of agency. A story of digital sovereignty. And among our elders, something stirred. For those who once marched for civil rights, this felt familiar. That same pulse of liberation, just in another form. Where they once demanded the right to vote, these young Africans now demand the right to code. Where they once said, "We shall overcome," these youth now say, "We shall outlearn." In community centers and church halls, conversations began to bloom. Pastors, educators, activists, they began to ask, how can we connect? How can we support? Because, beloved, diaspora is not just distance. It is destiny. We are many rivers, but one sea. And while Africa trains her coders, the world is watching too. In Beijing, in Washington, in Paris, analysts take notes, investors make calls, think tanks publish papers. Some see a new market, others see a new movement. And quietly, the question grows. What happens when Africa stops importing technology and starts exporting it? It's a question that stirs both excitement and unease, because a self-reliant Africa is not a weak partner. It's a powerful equal, and equality has always unsettled the world. But in America, especially among the Black community, this moment feels like a homecoming of the spirit, because when one branch of the tree rises, the whole tree feels it. We see our reflection in those young faces, the same resilience, the same hunger for dignity, the same light that once burned in Selma and Montgomery. And so I say to you, this is not their story. It is our story, unfolding in a different key. A song of redemption sung through algorithms, a sermon preached through circuitry, and if we listen closely, we will hear the echo of an old truth. We are still connected, by memory, by mission, by faith. But a movement does not end with applause. It must find a path forward, a road built by all who believe. So stay with me, family, as we take one final step together into the future that waits and the work that calls. Beloved family, every great awakening begins with a question. What now? Burkina Faso has taken its first step. 5,000 young dreamers have begun to write code where once there were only chalkboards. But the journey toward digital sovereignty, toward true freedom, will demand more than training. It will demand transformation. Because technology alone does not liberate, people do. Machines may calculate, but only vision can create. And vision is what must now guide Africa's digital dawn. So what lies ahead? First, there must be connection, not just the cables of the internet, but the cables of kinship. The young in Africa and the elders in America sharing wisdom across oceans. You, my listener, sitting in your home in Detroit or Atlanta or Chicago, you are part of this network. Your stories, your experience, your faith, they are code of another kind. The kind that teaches not just how to build, but why to build. Second, there must be commitment, because movements don't survive on inspiration alone. They thrive on consistency, on mentorship, on resources, on persistence when applause fades. It is easy to post a headline. It is harder to stay when the power goes out, when the funding slows, when the excitement cools. But that's when real builders keep building. Third, there must be community. No single nation can define Africa's future. From Lagos to Nairobi, from Accra to Addis, from Harlem to Houston, we must think as one ecosystem. Because AI Education Africa is not just a project, it is a calling to unite brilliance scattered across centuries. And finally, there must be faith. Faith that our children will learn faster than we did. Faith that our mistakes have prepared the soil for their harvest. Faith that what began in a dusty classroom in Burkina Faso can ignite a continent and inspire a diaspora. Because, beloved, this is not just about coding languages. It is about reclaiming the language of destiny. It is about teaching our children to speak not only in syntax, but in sovereignty. And that's why this moment matters. Not just for Africa, but for the soul of Black humanity everywhere. If we do nothing, the story fades. If we do something, even one small act, the story grows wings. So ask yourself tonight, what seed will you plant in this digital soil? A word of encouragement? A connection shared? A student sponsored? Because history doesn't remember those who watched. It remembers those who worked. The door is open now, family. Africa has stepped into the light of the digital age. But will we walk beside her or watch from the shadows? Stay with me, because next we'll close this journey with a vision, not of what is, but of what could be. Family, we have walked through history together tonight, from the sands of the Sahel to the screens of Silicon Valley, from the hope of 5,000 students to the heart of 1 billion souls. And what we have seen is more than an initiative. It is an awakening. The world once looked at Africa and saw only need. Now it must look again and see leadership. For when a continent begins to master its own algorithms, when its children begin to code in their own languages, when its leaders begin to speak of digital sovereignty, that is not progress. That is prophecy fulfilled. Beloved, we are standing at a threshold. One step forward and the future belongs to us. One step back and we return to dependence. So the question is not whether Africa can rise. She already is. The question is whether we will rise with her. Because this moment, this AI Education Africa movement, is not just about schools or software. It is about reclaiming dignity in a digital world. It is about saying to every young person on that continent, you belong in the conversation that shapes humanity. To the elders watching tonight, your fight was not in vain. Every march, every hymn, every prayer for freedom, it led here. To this age where your grandchildren can not only dream, but design. To the youth, this is your time. Your ancestors built pyramids without blueprints. You can build systems without permission. So build. Build with courage. Build with conscience. Build with love. And to the diaspora, to every Black soul watching from afar, this is our call home. Not by boat, not by blood, but by belief. We are one family, and the future is waiting for us to act like it. So, my brothers and sisters, if you believe in Africa's future, if you believe in our shared power, hit subscribe right now. Share this video. Leave a comment below. Tell me, If you were one of those 5,000 students, what would you create for your people? Because this is not the end. It is the beginning, the first light of a new dawn. And when generations look back, may they say of us, they didn't just watch the change, they became it. Digital sovereignty is not a dream. It is a duty. Digital sovereignty is not a slogan. It is a sacred calling. The code has been written, the future is compiling, and the time, beloved, is now.